Welcome to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. I'm your host, Marley Freygang, and I'm here to help you filter out all the bullshit and become the next It Girl. This podcast explores the reality of what it really takes to make it out there. As it turns out, it is way less Instagrammable than I thought it was going to be. I'm still very much a work in progress, but there's simply nothing else I'd rather be doing than chasing my dreams. So let's learn from my mistakes and work together to achieve our dreams with more confidence, clarity, and direction. Let's get after it. Hi guys, and welcome back to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Today I am joined by Amy Natalie, the host of the Feminine Frequency podcast. She is also a coach who is here to help you reset, receive, and surrender to your feminine flow of life so you can embrace the balance of life and pleasure. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to connect with your listeners. What's up, everybody?
I'm so excited too because I feel like something we all deal with is this idea of burnout in this very hustle culture. And I'm excited to talk to you about it in a way I don't think we've ever talked before on this podcast, and being really in flow with our feminine energy and how to deal with burnout.
Yeah, burnout is something that I see really often too. So I'm excited to talk more about that.
So I want to dive into overcoming burnout and working with what is called your cyclical nature. Did I say that right?
Cyclical nature.
Cyclical nature. So I don't even know what that is. What is cyclical nature?
Yeah. So in our Western culture, we are kind of taught that we need to work this 9 to 5 schedule, but not just 9 to 5, because now we have our phones and we can work outside of work, and kind of this idea that we always need to be on. And we learn from a young age that we need to work hard if we want to be successful, and that the only way to make more money is to continue to achieve, right? And the only way to be worthy and to be loved and to be accepted is to receive all these accolades and to be someone really big and amazing. And so we have these patterns of unworthiness and of hyperproductivity that often, especially as women, don't align with how our natural cycles of our energy works. So if we even look on a scientific hormonal level, we see that men have a 24-hour cycle with their hormones. They reset every 24 hours. As women, we reset every 28 days. So, 28 to 31, depending on your menstrual cycle. And I know that some people have irregular cycles. So really, if we can kind of just know that it's not going to be the same for everyone, but really the purpose of understanding cyclical nature is understanding how your body works, how your energy level works, so that you can be optimally functional, how you can be optimally productive, but also so that you can feel nourished and that you can feel creative and feel good when you are working towards something. So honoring your cyclical nature is actually learning that we all have different seasons of our lives. We have different seasons within our careers and within our health and within our relationships. And we can tune into these seasons more and really give ourselves rest when we actually need it. And then when we do have the energy, to really focus that energy into the projects and the passions that bring us the most joy. So learning how to work with your energy instead of against your energy, especially as a woman, or as I like to call, a feminine being.
So, because we have these sort of patterns that do have nuances as having feminine energy, can burnout become a pattern for us as well because we are working with the same cycle? Can it come back to you because you are burnt out at that same time?
Yeah, I see this a lot, and it's interesting. Sometimes we have to learn the same lesson multiple times before we actually start to listen. And For some people, burnout sneaks up on them where they have a really stressful event at work or a really stressful life event. And then the total sum of the stress that they're experiencing brings it to the surface, and they end up feeling super depleted, exhausted, not excited about the things that they normally are excited about, feeling behind on everything, not having capacity to get back to your emails and text messages and to show up for your daily activities that you need to show up for. And then it can also show up as this kind of longer term pattern where we kind of have these symptoms that are showing up beforehand that are slowly creeping up, but we often don't listen to those because we override the messages of our body because we think that we have to show up or like we're going to fail, right? Or we have to show up or other people are going to be disappointed or mad at us. And so we kind of like build up this burnout, and we get to a place where we don't really have a choice. Like something happens to our health, or we can't focus. We have brain fog. We have different issues that come up. And oftentimes, like that is the sign for us to slow down. And maybe you might slow down for a little bit, but if you don't truly replenish yourself, then and you just go back to the same patterns, it will show up again. So this is really about noticing when this pattern of burnout is starting to happen and catching it before you get to that tipping point where you can't just go back to normally what you're doing, and learning how to create more harmony and more balance between what I like to call your masculine and feminine energy in your everyday life so that you don't keep reaching this place of burnout.
I have a quick aside there. It's super interesting. I love what you said about how you have to address it because it will just come back even if you think you kind of took care of it for a while. Yeah, I find that, we take a day off or we take an hour off and then you go back thinking I've completely reset, and you haven't, and it will again reappear quickly, maybe harsher, bigger, stronger, and different, and you're not really taking care of that energy. That's something I've definitely struggled a lot with. So I want to know, what are the signs and symptoms you see often that can kind of be our indicator that we need to take more attention here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the symptoms that's pretty straightforward is feeling tired, but a lot of times we cover that up with drinking caffeine or just staying busy, and then we push it to the side and don't actually listen to that. So that's one symptom that your body might be telling you is, hey, I'm feeling tired right now. Another one, especially as women, is irregular hormone cycles or having a lot of difficulties around your menstrual cycle. That's really our bodies telling us that our stress hormone is too high and that it's in overdrive. And so then it's impacting our other hormones, our estrogen and our progesterone. So then we're having issues with our menstrual cycle. So our bodies are always speaking to us. Another symptom that you can have is brain fog, which I hear often, where it's like challenge, really just difficulty focusing. And that's oftentimes because we have too much on our plate and we're trying to multitask, doing too many different things. And our brain actually needs space for quiet. We live in a society where we consume so much. We consume books, we consume podcasts, we consume messages on social media, we consume emails. We're constantly connected to our phones, and our brains actually are not meant to be operating at this high functioning level all of the time. And so that's really something that you can start to notice is like, if you're not as focused when you're working, or if you're having a hard time with your memory, that also is a sign that you could be feeling burnt out. And then lastly, any chronic health issues. This could be digestive issues, could be headaches, it could be certain pain in your body. It could also be emotional symptoms like chronic anxiety or depression. These are all signs that your soul and your body are trying to speak to you and trying to send you signals that something is off. And we're just not taught how to actually listen to those signals.
Right. And I also feel like there's such a Band-Aid effect to this. Like we mentioned that you'll just pick up the caffeine or be like, oh, I'm tired, I just got to keep going, instead of listening to the intuitive sign of I need to take a break or I need a redirect here. how can we really like empower ourselves to take those breaks in this society? Because that, I feel like for me, that's the hardest thing, because I feel like, oh, I'm being lazy if I'm not working right now, or, oh, and it's just so inundated in this society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first thing that I want to share is rewriting the story that it is not okay to take care of yourself. Because when we take care of ourselves as women, we are actually able to show up so much more for our responsibilities and for the people that we love. And so often we don't take care of ourselves, which leaves us feeling depleted. And then we're only giving at like 20 to 30% of our capacity. So that's the first thing that I really want to hone in on, is that it's not selfish to take care of yourself or to slow down, that when you do that, it allows for greater productivity and more presence in your everyday interactions. When you learn, like, it takes time to trust, because if you're so used to operating in this go, go, go mode, and you're not used to slowing down and not used to seeing the benefits of taking this time for yourself and seeing how it then translates into your work, into your relationships, it can be really challenging to do. But the more that you do it, the more you're going to see. Every time that I listen to my body, every time that I take these breaks, every time that I nourish myself, that actually leads to better outcomes than when I show up as a like more drained version of myself.
I think also I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this. I think it's really hard for us to communicate with our community, our family, our partners, our employees when we are experiencing burnout. How is the best way to kind of let each of those areas know in a, professional way, but also, very authentically true to what's happening?
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to here is vulnerability and also leadership. Because when you set the bar and when you let other people know that it is important to take care of yourself, and you're prioritizing that and you're showing an example of that, it actually gives other people permission to do that too. So whenever you're speaking your truth or you're sharing something vulnerable, not everyone is going to get it. And we have to really get used to that, especially if you consider yourself a people pleaser or a perfectionist. We don't like when people don't agree with us, or when people might be a little bit disappointed or a little upset with us. And we kind of have to get over that, because there's no way to show up as your best self when you're constantly trying to worry if you're going to upset other people. So I think that, being really honest and clear, but coming from a regulated place, because if you're in that place of feeling hyper anxious and you end up sharing from that place of being really anxious, people are going to feel that. So what I recommend is to do some journaling, do some meditation, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do. Talk to your therapist, talk to a mentor, talk to a friend, process it before you actually share what you want to share. And then make sure that it's the right timing. So you don't want to just like throw this out there in the middle of a meeting or when someone else is in a different task. Like, wait to set up a time where you're going to feel grounded and where this person can actually receive what you're trying to share with them. And that often is way more effective than just like rushing to share it because you feel like it's so urgent and you're feeling so anxious that you have to get it out.
You said something that I want to go back to, because I think a lot of people can identify with being, I call it a recovering people pleaser, or working to recover from that. And it's that not everybody is going to be okay with it, and not everybody's going to get it. How do you stay comfortable and grounded in that space if you're kind of building your sea legs in that area?
Yeah, I'll share a personal story with this one, because this has been such a deep pattern that I've had to learn over the years, and that really was significantly impacting my life. When I was in my early 20s, I got married, and I was living a life that on paper looked really amazing. And it was a life that I thought was going to make me happy. And I was like reaching all these success markers. I had my own business. I got married before I was like 25. We bought a house together, like all the things that we are told by society are going to make us happy, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know this, but subconsciously, I was making decisions because I wanted the approval of my parents and I wanted the approval of the social eye of other people. And while there were some decisions that were true to me, a lot of them were made from this place of wanting to please others, wanting to make others happy, not wanting to disappoint people, not wanting to let other people down. And as a result of that, I ended up in a place of significant depression and anxiety on a daily basis. And because of that anxiety, I was waking up in the morning at 4 a.m. with my heart pounding, feeling so uncomfortable in my body. And I went to do a morning meditation because that's all I could do. It was like the house was quiet. I couldn't really do anything else. And I had tried meditating so many times before, but was never able to be consistent with it. And this time it felt like I had no choice. Like I needed to do this because nothing else was working. And so I sat in meditation. And during that meditation, one of the things that came through was, are you going to keep trying to make everyone else happy at the expense of your own happiness? Are you going to keep living for everyone else and suffering internally? And it was through that experience where I made a promise to myself that even if people are not happy with me, even if people are not happy with my decision, which ultimately was to end my marriage and to move forward with my life in a different direction, even if people were upset with me, that's what I needed for my own sanity, for my own well-being, for my physical and emotional well-being. And the people who love me and support me, if they can show up and they can be there for me, amazing. And the people who can't, I have to let that go because it was really destroying my mental and emotional health. So I share that as kind of an extreme example, but I know that there's a spectrum of, even daily things that we do as women where we say yes when we really mean no, or we agree to do something when we don't have capacity for it. And every single time that we do that, we're abandoning ourselves. We are saying this person is more important than me. And it is challenging to start to work towards this, and it does take practice, but it is possible. And the biggest thing is continuing to build your own confidence and build your own self-love and build your own self-worth, because when you're in that place, you're not as reliant on external approval and validation. You're like, okay, I'm okay with the fact that some people are not going to like this, or if that person doesn't really see me for who I am and they're going to judge me, then that's their choice. And I love myself anyways. And I'm choosing this because I'm worthy of taking care of myself. So those are some mindset perspectives that I would offer for anyone who's struggling with people pleasing.
Yeah. I love what you said. I've never heard the term societal eye. And I think that really encompasses the pressures that we feel in the world about what we should be doing at what time and what age and what benchmarks we want to be hitting. It's such a weird concept that kind of feels like, for me, it lives up in the clouds, but putting a finger on it and saying societal eye really encompasses that for me. And I also loved what you said about abandoning the self by people pleasing. And I think that's a really interesting way, because I've seen it for myself and, for other people as well, that when you people please, you think it's about the other person, that you're really, leaning into being there for them. But what are you giving up for yourself? And these are important things to be so aware of when you're in or out of a state of burnout, because I can see how this leads so much to creating just not a healthy space to continue functioning and being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one thing that I want to add to that too, is that not only are you not taking care of yourself, but there's this belief that when we're people pleasing, that we're doing it because we don't want to upset other people. But the sneaky part about people pleasing, and when I learned this, I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of twisted. Like, I didn't even know
Oh
this,
no.
was that it's actually really selfish. We people please because we don't want other people to be upset with us. We don't want other people to not like us. So it's our ego's way of protecting us to be the nice girl, to be the good girl, to always be available for other people. Because if we don't, then other people are going to not be our friends or not want to be around us. So when I learned that, I was like, oh, that's pretty messed up, that like I'm making these choices because I'm afraid of like other people not liking me, when really all this time my mind was telling me that I was doing this because I don't want to hurt them. And that's the truth of what people pleasing is. And when we look at it from that lens, like it's not loving to you or to other people to keep essentially being dishonest and to continue like doing things just because you don't want other people to be upset with you.
Oh yeah, that is a hard pill to swallow, but I really like that perspective, because it also really shows you that there is room to change, because you're not even being helpful in that way. You know, you spend a lot of time coaching, you have all these amazing courses. What is kind of the reoccurring theme you see in your clients that cause burnout?
Yeah, I think if we boil it down to the root of it, I teach a lot about different limiting beliefs and different ways that we relate to ourselves. And one of the core beliefs is feeling unworthy, which is like, I need to prove myself in order to be good enough. So I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to keep showing up for other people, even when I don't have capacity, because I don't believe I'm worthy exactly as I am. And another core belief is that I'm unlovable, meaning that I need to change or fix myself. So that might even be your physical appearance. That could be your personality. That could be, aspects of your life that you feel like you need to change in order for other people to love you. And these are really deep core wounds that come from our childhood. We usually develop these before the age of 7, and they end up being these repetitive cycles that drive us to take certain actions so that we don't end up alone, so that we don't feel neglected, and that we don't feel abandoned. And when we can start to identify, oh, these are some of the deeper roots that why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and we start to address those and heal those, then we can get out of some of these patterns. And like you mentioned, there are also societal expectations and norms that we grow up with, and we learn that that is the way that things should be. And we get convinced that there is no other way. These are very fear-based patterns that we don't even know that we've absorbed. We might absorb them when we're younger, seeing our parents in hustle mode because they were in survival mode, if they were immigrants, or if they, were struggling to put a roof over their head for their children. Like, we learn that that's the only way that you can do it. And we are in a time where we are shifting out of survival mode, and as we shift these patterns, we can learn how to thrive and actually enjoy our lives instead of constantly just working to make money to then retire and then to eventually enjoy our lives. Like, that's not what we're here for.
100%. And that takes me exactly where I wanted to go, which is starting to work on changing these limiting beliefs and strategies for dealing with this kind of mess we might have made for ourselves. Where can one get started?
What I would say is that a lot of these beliefs are stored both in our mind and in our bodies. And the more that we can connect with our true authentic self, meaning the more that we can slow down and tune in and listen to our emotions and listen to our thoughts, the less that we are believing in the false narratives that society is telling us. So our ego will always default, which you can even say like your mind is your ego, will always default to what you've already learned in the past. And we have the power to create new beliefs, to create new thoughts, to create new ways of being when we are able to reprogram our mind and also to connect with our authentic self. So some of the practices that I share in my book, The Feminine Way, are about cultivating a daily ritual of creating space to connect with yourself. You can do this through meditation, either guided meditation or silent meditation. You can do this by spending time in nature, by journaling, by praying. You can do this by dancing and getting into your body, like getting out of your mind and coming into some intuitive movement, listening to music and just connecting to your breath and your body. There's lots of different rituals and practices that we can do. And these all help us to connect with, okay, what's true for me? What do I really want? What lights me up? What makes me happy? And how can I do more of that instead of what I feel like I should do, or instead of acting like a version of myself that I've been performing as because I've been trying to fit in. And so these practices, this daily devotion, allows us to connect more deeply with who we are on a soul level. And the more that we connect with that, the more that we can show up as that version of ourselves.
I love what you said about doing a daily practice so that this is, you're constantly building on it. And I think that also really starts to show self-worth and self-confidence because you've been working at something every day. It's like building a block every day. It's only going to get higher. And I want to talk about, we talked about it at the very top of the episode, kind of working a little bit with the menstrual cycle. Like, what is the opportune times to be working, to be meditating, or, what should be the focus on each phase?
Yeah, I love this topic so much because it really has shifted the way that I work. It has shifted the way that I show up in my social life. It has connected me so much more deeply with my body and my emotions, and it has helped me with my mental health. It's been such a huge shift to really tune into this. And in my book, I have a whole chapter on different ways that you can align with your cyclical nature, but I'll give a good overview for today. Throughout our menstrual cycle, we actually have 4 distinct seasons, and these different seasons line up with different shifts in our hormones throughout the month. So if we were to start and say that when you actually start your period, that would be more of a winter season, right? You're in the winter. We usually tend to be a little bit slower, a little bit more emotional, maybe not have as much energy. That's a time where you can clear your schedule as much as possible. Even if you can't get off work or change your work schedule, you can say, okay, I'm not going to sign up for all these social events during this time of my menstrual cycle. And when we start to work with our menstrual cycle instead of against it, it feels a lot easier because there's nothing worse than like having cramps or being super tired and like trying to socialize or show up for more things than you already have to. So after that period, which can be, 1 to 7 days, then we go into our spring cycle. And this is where we are in our follicular phase. Follicular phase is usually where we can have more creativity, where we are kind of a little bit more external focused. This is where you might take on new projects, new ideas. And that's a time where you can really maybe start new things, start new projects is a good time. Then we have our ovulation, which usually is when we're the most social. That's when we are the most externally focused and where we have the most energy. And then we start to come into our luteal phase, which is before you actually start your period, which is usually about a week to 10 days before. And that's where we start to wind down. And I would call that the fall. So if we were to just like do a recap of that, we have the winter is when you're in your period. Then we have the spring when we're in follicular phase. Then ovulation would be the summer, and then luteal would be the fall. And we go through that cycle every single month. Yeah, we go through that cycle every single month. And then throughout the year, we repeat that cycle.
I think it's so empowering, and it's just such a odd thing. I feel like that we weren't taught in school to know about this and just like to maximize, what's going on with you at those times. I think that's hopefully something, that I would hope my future hypothetical children get to grow up with that is going to change, because I didn't feel like I heard about any of this until about a year ago. And it's obviously women have been having periods forever. So I don't know why it's been such a gate kept thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've been living in a more patriarchal and Western, like, consumerism and capitalism society for our entire lifetime, right? And it's been happening for centuries before we were even born. So it makes sense that we've gotten so disconnected from our bodies, and we're disconnected from nature, we're disconnected from the seasons, from the cycles. And I think it's really beautiful that we are living in a time which I refer to as the feminine rising, which is a time where we are really reconnecting with these parts of ourselves as individuals and as a collective.
I totally agree. And it leads right into, we are still in what we consider like a hustle culture, a patriarchal society. And, we're kind of learning to work with this rising feminine energy. How can we kind of do both? Balance them. Like, you can't call out of work on, some level because you have period cramps. Like, what is the balance?
Yeah, and that is really the destination point. I wouldn't even call it a destination point because it is an ongoing practice. I've been working with these principles of masculine and feminine energy for almost 7 years now, and they are deeply ingrained into my life and have radically transformed my life. But it still is an ongoing practice because I do tend to default more towards my masculine energy, and some people tend to default towards their feminine energy. And so the point isn't that you're not supposed to be in your masculine energy. The point is, can we create more harmony between these two? And so, even if you're at work, you can infuse some feminine energy into your day. That could look like stepping outside on your lunch break and putting your feet in the earth, or going for a walk and taking some deep breaths. That could look like stepping away from your desk, and it could be like drinking some water and taking some deep breaths, essentially getting out of your mind and into your body, connecting with yourself more deeply. One of my favorite things to do is actually take one of my hands and put it on my heart and just take a deep breath into that space. And that helps me to remember to connect with myself. How am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? Right? Because that allows us to tune to those symptoms and signals before we get to that place of burnout. So there are ways that we can infuse some more feminine energy into our work days. We can also use the masculine structure of organization and planning to create more space for your feminine. So if you know that you tend to be more creative and you tend to be more in a writing flow, or depending on what the nature of your work is, if you know that you do better at that in the morning, you can do your best to plan your meetings in the afternoon. Or maybe there are certain days of the week where you structure your schedule so that you can maybe on Monday start a little bit slower into the week and work on certain things that allow you to be more in your feminine energy versus being in that constant logical, analytical mind. So that's during work, but really this does require, it's called inner work for a reason. And this requires daily practice of, before you start rushing and pick up your phone and jump into emails and get started working right away, it's about prioritizing that time. You can start with 5 minutes in the morning, and I promise it will make a huge difference. I have a client right now who's a teacher. She wakes up really early to get to school. And this year, she's been teaching for 20 years or something. And this year is the first time where she hasn't felt stressed out of her mind, because she has taken some time for herself to get grounded and centered before she starts her day. And similarly, after work, having those boundaries to turn off work and enjoy your life, go do something that you're passionate about, connect with your creative hobbies, get outside in nature. We don't have to be glued to our screens 24/7.
I totally agree. And I love what you said about using the masculine structure of I use Google Planner like it is nobody's business, but I schedule in Wednesdays is now the day I journal, meditate. Tuesdays, I take a walk with my fiance, and that is scheduled in there. And I'm using the structure to make sure I'm getting back to that feminine energy. So I'm a little proud of myself for doing that. But
Right.
also, like, I think that's a very easy way to incorporate it. And, it's really interesting what you said about the teacher. She's been teaching for 20 years. The fact that, she's taking more time. I hear all the time people say, oh, I don't have the time for that. Oh, I don't have the time for it. And it's like, you actually don't have the time not to do it, because that's what's keeping you in the red at the extreme tipping point. It's such an interesting thing that we just won't create more time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, and that being said, I want to talk a little bit about more extreme cases. And you shared that beautiful personal story about how you came to the decision of what you were going to do. Let's say you are in burnt out, red. There's been no baby steps along the way. What are the steps to get started in recovering from massive burnout?
Yeah, I like to refer to this as the pendulum swing, and this happens a lot for people. So if you've been super far in your masculine energy, your body has no choice but to swing to super far in your feminine energy. And that looks like a lot of rest, a lot of nourishment, a lot of saying no to things that you don't actually have capacity to do, and a lot of self-care. And unfortunately, sometimes that's how we learn the lesson, is when we wait until it's too late to then have to take that time off. Like, some people have to take medical leave from work because they physically cannot perform in the same way that they have before. So it does look like a lot of slowing down, a lot of tuning out the outside noise that's creating the stress, maybe taking a break from social media, nourishing baths, spending time reading. Like, what does it look like for you to let your mind and your body rest and relax? And when you do that, I promise that will help you to come back faster than if you keep trying to push yourself too much. It's going to take you longer to recover. And I've found that so often on my own journey, specifically with my health. I've had autoimmune issues for a long time now, and I used to get sick really often. I would get colds all of the time. And now, the sooner that I listen, like as soon as I start to feel like my lymph nodes starting to swell, or I feel a little bit drained in my energy, I know these subtle cues. And instead of continuing to push myself with my workouts, with overdoing it, whenever I slow down and I listen to that, drink more water, get more rest, take some supplements, I always get better faster, and I never actually get sick. And so I haven't actually been sick very much in the last 4 to 5 years since I really started honoring my body in this way, because I'm listening to those signs. And I know it can feel really hard, but it's so much better than getting to that place of just constantly being sick and run down all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree, because when I always use the example of a cell phone battery, because that's something a lot of people understand, is like, if it is already at 5% and you only charge to 10%, we're not really actually fully charged. So sometimes, as hard as it can be, and sometimes it doesn't feel that supported, to take that much time to enjoy the long baths, take the long walks, cook a full meal, it's exactly what you need to be getting back to your high quality work, your high quality life. Because I also find that the quality of your work is suffering so much more. It's, again, you can't afford not to take the break, because we don't want to be putting out bad output either. It's just not worth it. So I wanted to also ask you, goal doesn't seem kind of the right word to me, so maybe you can help with this. But if you want to be tapping into your feminine frequency, feminine energy, and it's something you really want to be working on, what's something we could be working on? And, how do we put that into our life?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a few of the key principles of connecting with your feminine energy. In my book, I talk about 7 primary codes, which when I say the word codes, they are essentially these bits of wisdom and ways of being that help us to unlock something that we already know. This is like ancient stuff. We're just like remembering it because we've gone so far away from it. So one of those codes that we talked about was daily devotion, taking that time to connect with yourself and to tune in to what does my body need? Where are my emotions at right now? Another code that we talked about was about the cyclical nature of honoring your cycles and the different seasons that you're in. I also talk about prioritizing pleasure. So it's like, instead of just doing all the things that you feel like you should do, like what actually lights you up? What feels good for you? And how can you bring more of that into your life and enjoy the experience instead of just being a human doing instead of a human being, right? And another aspect that is a huge component of my work is what I like to call feminine embodiment work, which is really the practice of getting out of your head and into your body. One of the most common practices that we know of is yoga. A lot of people find embodiment work through yoga, which is really connecting the mind, the body, and the spirit through using the power of the breath. So yoga is a way where we can help to bring your attention out of your thoughts and bring it back into your body. Any other, intentional movement practices, things like even breath work is really supportive to help you to get into your body. And what I teach is called feminine embodiment work, which is really intuitive movement, which kind of, you can call it dancing, but it's really not structured. It's not like a choreographed dance, but it's putting on some music and closing your eyes and seeing how your body wants to move and connecting with your breath and the sensations in your body. So anything that we can do to get out of our minds and into our bodies is going to help us to connect with our feminine energy.
Amy Natalie, you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you so much taking the time to talk to us today about this. But, I want you to be able to tell everybody where they can find you, find your book, find your podcast, and all those good things.
Amazing. Thank you again for having me here. And if there's anything that I shared today that really resonated with you as our listeners, please feel free to send me a personal message. You can find me on Instagram at Amy Natalie Co. And in the link in my bio, you'll find the link to pre-order my book. You'll find the link for my podcast. You can also go to my website, amynatalieco.com, which is where you can order The Feminine Way, my book, and then tap into the feminine frequency, which is the name of my podcast as well. So would love to connect with you in all of those ways.
Yay. Thank you guys so much for listening to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl, and a huge thank you to Amy Natalie for coming on the show. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show. You can also check out our YouTube page as well as our TikTok and Instagram. As always, we'll see you next Tuesday.